Height was one of the first things identified about me when I was born. The baby has such long legs. And I have a lot of mothers. All of my parents have been divorced and remarried 3 times. Mother's Day cards used to just kill me. Had a lot of grandmothers too. But that entire plethora of parents, nobody was tall, and nobody thought that being tall had anything to do with my experiences in life. Thank goodness that random people in the Portland metro area had been telling me about the Portland Skyliners Tall Club from about age 14 on. I wasn't really comfortable with other tall people, and I went there to get over it. Boy, did I. There I found women who could relate to my stories of inappropriate responsibility and inappropriate advances on our young selves, mostly due to height. I also learned there to not only accept it, but embrace it. Like, I'm tall, and that's okay. You don't have to be, but if you are, that's okay too. Being part of the community of the Portland Skyliners Tall Club since I was, a wee one, has given me so many opportunities for growth through service. The song had the line in it about when we give, we grow. And that has certainly been the case for me. 32 years later, with this tall club, they're like friends of mine. And some of them are family. Family's what I was referring to. Amy, did we happen to get that slide? Don't worry about it. We're having so many technical things going on today. I wanted to show you a slide from a parade, the Starlight Parade, part of the Rose Festival, where I was married on top of an 8 by 24 foot wedding cake, surrounded by my friends. And we even built a church for my family members to be able to attend. We were married in a parade going through downtown Portland. Rod Anders got up on there, and we did it again for the cameras. Parades have been a really big part of my life, and they continue to be, because that's mostly where we get our advertising in the Skyliners. Parades are a very interesting confluence of, civic, municipal, private, nonprofit, religious, and other groups. And we're coming together to meet each other. And we're coming together to let the broader world know that we exist. And it's important that we know that these people are out there caring about things. They care about their kids, they care about who we're voting for. They care about how to be a mermaid. They care about all manner of things. And they're doing all kinds of interesting things, providing landscaping services to seniors and motorcycle processionals to honor deceased veterans. There's people creating all kinds of groups to make social and physical activities for people of different ages and abilities. There's social justice groups and religious groups and community theater groups. The array is vast, and a parade is a lovely place for them all to come together. And I appreciate very much, as a person walking around in a 6.5-inch tall crown, not this one, but an actual big giant crown I wear this year, that this community interaction can seem trite. I mean, it's not like my club, or even the Tall Clubs International organization that we're part of, is changing the lives of tall people everywhere. I mean, our brag is we came up with the California King. That changed some lives. But what it has done, it's created a very large network of people who've managed to remain friends across borders and oceans and political divides. Maybe we're better than family in some ways. I hope to never underestimate the power of specific, even quirky interests to pull people together from different walks of life. Working beside others toward a common goal can be rewarding in unexpected ways, including finding commonality with folks who might not be exactly like you. It's where I get my juice and how I make most of my connections. I would say that the Portland Skyliners, by themselves, have been responsible for giving me the kind of confidence that allows me to say, I don't know, let's put together this food for all these people last Saturday. And that's the kind of growth that's available to any of us if we just put our foot in and start somewhere, kind of anywhere. I'm really happy to be working here with this beloved community as well.
Herman Melville wrote, "We cannot live only for ourselves. 1,000 fibers connect us with our fellow man." A few months ago, I was scrolling through TED Talks looking for something interesting to watch. I happened to see the title of a talk called 500,000 Secrets. The title was intriguing to me, so I decided to tune in. The speaker, Frank Warren, had invited people to anonymously share a secret that they had never told anyone on a postcard sent to him. He shared some of them with his audience. Most people had decorated their cards with clip art or stock photos or their own artwork that illustrated their secrets. Many of the ones he shared had to do with children who knew about their parents' infidelity, admissions of sexual abuse by relatives or friends of the family that they couldn't tell their parents, people who confessed to loving someone other than their spouse, or crimes they had committed. But one in particular stood out to me, one that I've thought a lot about since then and tried to dig into what was behind it. This postcard showed a picture of New York's Twin Towers, and the secret was, "Everybody who knew me before 9/11 thinks I'm dead." Let's breathe that in for a moment. Everybody who knew me before 9/11 thinks I'm dead. This hit me hard. I had to sit with it and try to put myself in that person's shoes. What must their life have been like to make that split decision? Did they miss being in one of those buildings when they were late to work that day because of traffic, a dentist appointment, or because their child could not get off to school on time to catch the bus and they needed to drive them? Did they run out of the office to pick up breakfast or to meet a friend for coffee? Were they on their way back to work when they saw the first plane hit the tower? I could feel them standing on the sidewalk, looking up at the building where their office was, confused about what was happening, and seeing the smoke pour out of the floor beneath where they worked. Frozen in place, seeing the first responders arrive and watching people pour out of the building. Were they still standing there, unable to move when the building started to fall, and the tide of people just pulled them along to a nearby cross street as the cloud of dust and toxic ash rose up, making them fall to the pavement, and they rolled off the sidewalk under a truck parked at the curb, grabbing their shirt to pull it over their nose and mouth so that they could breathe? It must have seemed that the world had exploded and that everyone in Lower Manhattan was going to die that day. I can only imagine this could be very disorienting and confusing. One minute, it's a beautiful September day, blue skies and sunshine, and the next, it seemed as if hell had opened up and descended on the city. I can imagine that in the next several hours, when you realize that you survived this tragic event, that you would be glad to be alive and guilty at the same time. I've seen this with Vietnam vets who couldn't understand why they were alive when their buddies were not. Because soldiers in war forget the overarching reason while they are moving through a foreign land, killing the enemy. All the government's reasons seem nothing to them. They're only there to protect the lives of men and women they serve with, their buddies. I can imagine that this person wondered who in their company survived and who had been lost. Most people would want to go home to be with their families, but like the men and women who have served in combat missions, there's a camaraderie that evolves with the people who really know what it's like to fight that unknown and sometimes unseen enemy. You might think that no one at home would understand. But is that enough of a reason to just disappear? Once they got their bearings on that horrible day, when did it occur to them that they didn't have to go back? Was this the chance they didn't know they were looking for to create a new life? I know that people can disappear. Today it's much harder than it was before computers and for the ability of law enforcement to track missing persons by their credit card purchases and cell phones. When I read my ancestry family tree, I found that my grandmother's husband, my mom's dad, who abandoned his wife, my mother, and her 3 siblings, later married again 2 states away, about 10 years after he disappeared. It can be done today, but why would one want to? And I can tell you that the effect of my grandfather's disappearing had an enormous impact on my mother's life. She carried a deep-seated anger at her children for having a life she never got to have, spending 5 years in an orphanage. She planted a fear in us that we too might be abandoned someday. Years ago, I used to meet with a friend to write every Saturday morning, and we were sitting around tossing out ideas for the next project. I was single at the time, and although my life was not difficult except for the fact that I had little money, I had a lot of time to pursue working in the theater while holding down a part-time job. But still, there were times when I wished I could just drive right out of my life and into something new, and something that might be better. And I knew that if I felt that way from time to time, that other people with far more responsibility than me could experience that feeling too. I offered this scenario to my writing partner for our next project. A woman who's married with 2 young children who feels that she's given her life away, drops him off at school in the morning on her way to work, and just keeps driving. Nothing in her life is awful. She's just tired and restless. She wonders, where did she go? Where is the girl with all the dreams that set them aside when she got married and her life became their life? She realizes that her relationship with her husband is strained due to their working schedules, and frankly, the division of labor around the house and children doesn't feel equitable, especially since she needs to work to keep them all afloat, with the mortgage, car payments, and student loan debt. The children seem to want so much of her time and have less and less respect for her as they get older. The house never seems to be as clean and organized as it was before the children came. The bills were sometimes overwhelming, and her job was nowhere near the career she longed for and had just become day-to-day drudgery. The 2-week vacation she and her husband took every year seemed never to be enough time to reset and renew, and some years she just wished that her husband would take the children and let her stay home alone. The thought of that was heaven to her. My writing partner was stunned. Now understand this. This man was a real feminist, and it showed in the way he regarded women in real life and on the page. He told me flatly, no woman would do that, leave their children and disappear. I told him that women or men may not do that, but that most of them have thought about it. He didn't believe me. So I asked him to go to work that week and to ask people he knew if they ever thought of leaving. The next Saturday when we met, I asked him if he talked to anybody at work and what they'd said. He said, "My God, Mary Ellen, they've all thought about it. It's an epidemic." So We think about it, but very few actually do it. I went down a rabbit hole asking Google why some people disappear from their lives. Well, there were the standard answers about too many obligations, a brush with the law where they could be convicted of a crime, too much debt, mental illness. This was not answering my question. You will probably not be surprised that most of the questions were about whether it's a crime to disappear or how to do it, and the official reasons why someone would do this. That was very unsatisfactory to me. This Unitarian Universalist who really wants to tie all these things up at the end of a sermon. Some books and movies cover this topic with interesting results. Michael Clayton is a movie starring George Clooney, and there's a point in the plot where he disappears. It's not something that was planned. It just happens at a most convenient time. Ann Tyler's also tackled the subject in her book, Ladder of Years. The reasons these protagonists in this movie and book leave their lives are very different, and one can't help but wonder what communities they left behind. But back to our original person who disappeared after 9/11. How much do they regret not going back and dealing with the life they had before? Do they wish they'd reestablished contact at some point and regret their decision on that awful day? Have they watched with some morbid curiosity the remembrance gathering on 9/11 in subsequent years? Do they watch their children year after year, reading their name at an annual ceremony and growing up without them, and wondering how much they missed by not being there for every birthday and holiday? Do they ultimately sigh and say to themselves, well, they're better off without me? Have they gone to the 9/11 memorial and traced their fingers along their name carved in the marbles surrounding the footprint of the tower? Why don't we leave? Why don't we run at the first opportunity when life gets difficult and too much to deal with? It's because we are communal animals. We learned eons ago that to gather together in our tribes helped us to survive, not only because it was safer from outside sources, but because we had a shared history and we were better together. Priya Parker, in her book, The Art of Gathering, Why We Meet and Why It Matters, says that we gather for many reasons and that we, quote, spend our lives gathering, first in our families, then in neighborhoods and playgroups, schools and churches, then in meetings, town halls, conferences, birthday parties, product launches, board meetings, class and family reunions, dinner parties, trade fairs, and funerals, unquote. And I'm convinced that all these are necessary to our survival. If they weren't, I don't think we would have scrambled to find ways for all of us to be together during the pandemic. We need each other. It's as simple as that. Our churches are places where we can, as Parker says, quote, gather to celebrate, mourn, and mark transitions. We gather to make decisions. We gather because we need one another. We gather to show strength. We gather to honor and acknowledge. We gather to welcome. We gather to say goodbye, unquote. I would venture to say that people who know where they belong are less likely to look for a way to escape their lives and look for ways to embrace and be embraced by their communities. This is why our churches are so important. In a world where disconnection is so common, our faith can ground us in our common values in a group where everyone recognizes us as part of their tribe. I know that I don't want to live without that grounding from my life and soul. A community, this community, is as important and necessary for my survival as the air I breathe. I wish that for everyone, and especially for that poor soul that disappeared on 9/11, who felt their survival depended on leaving everything and everyone they knew behind. But I must say something about this community, a place that welcomed me so warmly and completely when I started my internship with you last September. I so appreciate you all, and am so grateful for my year with you. I've learned a lot walking with you in board, executive team, finance, and stewardship committee meetings, and into helping to establish a strong and committed Chalice Circle. And my time with some of you in pastoral care. I especially want to thank Marcia and my internship committee for their unflagging support and suggestions for improvement. I'm much more comfortable preaching now and leading a service, even though I still mess up with the microphone. And thank you for the grace you extended as I stumbled my way through the Sunday service, the beginning. This is a very special place, and I look forward to watching your progress from afar over the next years. I wish you all good things. May you, your children, and your children's children find a loving and a supportive home within these walls, and know that this is your community. But most of all, may we all know where we belong and who and whose we are. Amen.